You heard it here first. The Ottoman Empire launched a Mars rover in 1990. Imagine a world where the sick man of Europe never got sick, where Istanbul, not London or New York, dictated global finance by the mid-20th century. Picture this: the borders of the Middle East drawn by engineers in Ankara, not diplomats in Paris, and the first nation to harness desert solar power on a massive scale was a revitalized Ottoman Caliphate, still under Ottoman control in the 21st century. Number 7. The uncarved map of the Middle East. Imagine a Middle East where names like Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, and Palestine, as we know them on today's maps, simply do not exist in the same way. Instead, the vast territories from the Balkans to the Persian Gulf, from North Africa to the Caucasus, continue under the administration of a modernized Ottoman Empire. The Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, that infamous secret deal between Britain and France to carve up Ottoman lands, never happens. Why? Because the Ottoman Empire, having embarked on a path of successful modernization in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, is too strong, too resilient to be a mere plaything of European colonial ambitions. Old Ottoman vilayets, or provinces, like Mosul, Baghdad, Basra, Aleppo, Damascus, Beirut, Jerusalem, and Hejaz, continue their administrative functions. But these are not the stagnant backwaters some might imagine. Instead, fueled by reforms that grant greater local autonomy and representation within a federal, imperial structure, these regions experience organic development. Local councils, elected by the populace, manage regional affairs, sending representatives to an expanded imperial parliament, the Majlis-i Mebusan, in Istanbul. Debates in this parliament are vigorous, conducted in Ottoman Turkish, Arabic, and other major languages of the empire, discussing everything from railway expansion to water rights. The Berlin-Baghdad Railway, a project once fraught with tidal tension, is completed by 1925 under Ottoman supervision, becoming a vital artery of commerce and communication. It doesn't just link Berlin to Baghdad. Spurs and extensions connect it to Damascus, Medina, and even Tehran through cooperative agreements with Persia. Goods, people, and ideas flow with unprecedented ease. The Vilayet of Syria, encompassing modern Syria and Lebanon, becomes a powerhouse of agriculture and light industry by 1960, its cities like Damascus and Beirut bustling with commerce, their architecture a blend of traditional Levantine styles and modern Ottoman designs incorporating steel and glass. The question of Palestine takes a completely different turn. Without the British mandate, the Balfour Declaration's impact is localized and managed within the Ottoman framework of millet systems, where religious communities have a degree of self-governance. Jewish immigration continues as it had for centuries, but it's managed by Ottoman authorities who are keen to balance the interests of all communities, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, within the Vilayet of Jerusalem. There are tensions, yes, but they are internal Ottoman matters addressed through negotiation, local policing, and imperial courts, not international conflicts. Large-scale land purchases are regulated, and community development projects are often joint ventures encouraged by the Sublime Porte. Kurdistan, as a distinct political entity, does not emerge in the way it was partitioned by post-WWI treaties. Instead, Kurdish majority areas within the vilayets of Mosul, Diyarbakir, and Van see the development of Kurdish cultural institutions, schools teaching in Kurdish, alongside Ottoman Turkish, and local administrative bodies, where Kurdish notables play significant roles, all within the broader Ottoman state. The mountains are still home to proud tribes, but their relationship with the central government in Istanbul is one of evolving negotiation and integration rather than perpetual conflicts driven by external powers. The discovery of oil in the Mosul Vilayet further integrates the region into the imperial economy, with revenues shared through centrally managed development funds. The map remains largely intact, a tapestry of diverse peoples under a single evolving imperial banner. Number 6. The black gold flows differently. The year is 1927. Near Kirkuk, in the Ottoman Vilayet of Mosul, drills hit oil, big oil. But this isn't the story of Western oil companies swooping in to claim the lion's share. This is the Ottoman Empire, revitalized and assertive, taking control of its own destiny. The Ottoman Petroleum Company, Osmanlı Petrol Şirketi, established by imperial decree with significant state and private Ottoman investment, spearheads exploration, extraction, and refining. Engineers trained at the newly expanded Imperial College of Engineering in Istanbul and German technical universities manage the operations. This early control over its petroleum resources becomes a cornerstone of the empire's continued modernization and economic power. The vast revenues from oil do not just enrich a small elite. They are systematically channeled into infrastructure projects, more railways, modern ports on the Mediterranean, Red Sea and Persian Gulf, and extensive irrigation systems turning arid lands fertile. The Hejaz Railway, once primarily for pilgrims, is upgraded and expanded, becoming a key conduit for oil transport from newly discovered fields in the Arabian Peninsula, which remain under Ottoman suzerainty as the Vilayet of Hejaz and associated sanjaks. By 1940, the Ottoman lira, backed by substantial gold and petroleum reserves, is one of the world's most stable and sought-after currencies. Istanbul's financial district, centered around Galata, rivals London and New York as a hub for international finance and commodity trading. The global energy market looks vastly different. There's no Aramco dominated by American interests in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia as a separate kingdom doesn't form in the same way. The Al Saud family might be influential local notables within the Nej Sanjak, but the overarching authority and the wealth from oil resources are managed by the Central Ottoman government with negotiated shares for local development, OPEC. The organization of the petroleum exporting countries, if it forms at all, is either led by the Ottoman Empire or includes it as its most powerful member, dictating terms more favorable to producers much earlier in the 20th century. The oil shocks of the 1970s might happen differently, or earlier, or be managed proactively by a powerful Ottoman state keen on stable, long-term revenue rather than sudden price hikes that could destabilize its Western trading partners. The abundance of cheap domestic energy fuel a rapid industrialization across the empire. Factories in Anatolia, Syria, and even Mesopotamia produce textiles, machinery, and eventually automobiles and consumer electronics. Ottoman chemical industries, Larigim petroleum byproducts, become world leaders. The empire's energy independence also means it has significant leverage in international affairs. Countries become reliant on Ottoman oil shaping diplomatic alliances and trade agreements. Flow of black gold, managed by Ottoman hands, reshaped not just the Ottoman lands but the entire global economic landscape, making the empire an indispensable economic superpower well into the 21st century. There are no vast foreign military bases guarding oil fields, because the Ottoman military, modernized and well-funded, secures its own resources. Number 5. A world war without the sick man. Eastern question, that perennial 19th century European diplomatic headache concerning the anticipated collapse of the Ottoman Empire, is answered not by its demise, but by its resurgence. By the early 1900s, the Ottoman military has undergone significant reforms, advised by German and even British experts who now see a stable Ottoman state as a bulwark rather than a target. The Navy boasts modern dreadnoughts built in Ottoman shipyards with foreign technical assistance, and the army is better trained, equipped, and led. When the July crisis of 1914 erupts, The Ottoman Empire is not the crumbling power easily manipulated into war. Instead, Sultan Mehmed VI, or a similarly reformed successor, and his Grand Vizier preside over a government that carefully weighs its options. They are not desperate for an alliance to survive. They have choices. One scenario sees the Ottomans choosing a path of armed neutrality, much like Spain or Sweden in our timeline. Their modernized military makes any invasion a costly proposition. This neutrality means no Gallipoli campaign, saving hundreds of thousands of lives. The Middle Eastern front of World War I simply doesn't happen. British, French, and Russian ambitions to dismember the empire are thwarted by its internal strength and diplomatic maneuvering. The resources and manpower the Entente and Central Powers poured into fighting, the Ottomans are deployed elsewhere, potentially shortening or altering the course of the war on the Western and Eastern fronts in Europe. Another possibility is that the Ottomans, weary of Russian expansionism towards the Straits and British-French encroachment in Egypt and North Africa, still lean towards the Central Powers, but as a far more capable and independent ally. In this version, an Ottoman army, better supplied and led, could pose a much greater threat to the Suez Canal or launch more effective campaigns in the Caucasus. This might draw more Entente resources south, potentially relieving pressure on Germany in the west. Gallipoli, if attempted, could be an even more decisive Ottoman victory, humiliating the Entente. A third, more radical path. What if the Ottomans, having seen Germany's rising naval power as a threat and having resolved many of their issues with Britain and France through negotiation, perhaps concerning Egypt or Cyprus, decide to align with the Entente? An Ottoman Empire on the side of Britain, France, and Russia would dramatically shift the balance of power. The Dardanelles and Bosphorus remain open to Allied shipping, allowing Russia to be resupplied more easily. Ottoman armies could pressure Austria-Hungary from the south and engage German interests in the Middle East, if any. The war would be profoundly different, and likely shorter, with a more decisive Entente victory. Whichever path is chosen, the outcome is a world where the Ottoman Empire survives World War I intact, its sovereignty unchallenged, its prestige enhanced. Post-war settlement doesn't involve carving up its territories. Instead, the empire is a key participant in shaping the new world order. Perhaps as a founding member of a League of Nations-type organization, but one where its voice carries significant weight. Trauma of a devastating war and foreign occupation, which shaped modern Turkey in our timeline, is avoided, leading to a different societal and political evolution. Number 4. The Caliphate goes global and modern. The Ottoman Sultan wasn't just an emperor. He was also the Caliph, the spiritual leader of a vast number of Sunni Muslims globally. In our timeline, the Caliphate was abolished in 1924 by the Turkish Republic. But in a world where the Ottoman Empire modernizes and survives, the Caliphate continues, and it too undergoes a transformation. It doesn't remain a medieval institution. It adapts to the 20th and 21st centuries. Imagine a caliphate that embraces modern communication and organizational methods. The Sheikh-ul-Islam in Istanbul, the chief religious official, presides over an international council of Islamic scholars drawn from across the Muslim world, from India to Indonesia, from Africa to Central Asia. This council issues guidance, fatwas, on contemporary issues, bioethics, financial regulation in a globalized economy, human rights, environmental stewardship, even the ethics of space exploration. These pronouncements are translated into dozens of languages and disseminated globally through Ottoman-funded radio networks, publishing houses, and eventually satellite television and the internet. This modernized caliphate becomes a powerful instrument of Ottoman soft power. It funds educational institutions, not just religious seminaries, but universities, teaching science, medicine, and engineering, infused with an ethical framework derived from Islamic tradition. Across the Muslim world, Al-Azhar University in Cairo, still within the Ottoman sphere of influence or a closely allied Egypt, becomes a global center for both Islamic scholarship and modern sciences, working in tandem with imperial universities in Istanbul, Damascus, Baghdad, and a newly established Indispensable, Damascus to Islamic studies, and a newly established in Senegal. Caliphate provides a unifying focal point for Muslims worldwide, offering a narrative of Islam that is compatible with modernity, progress, and peaceful coexistence. It actively counters extremist interpretations of the faith, promoting a version of Islam that emphasizes justice, learning, and compassion. This doesn't mean all Muslims globally accept the Ottoman Caliph's authority unquestioningly, but his influence is immense, comparable to that of the Pope for Catholics, but with a more direct political backing from a major world power. Pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, the Hajj and Umrah, are managed with incredible efficiency and care by Ottoman authorities, using modern logistics and infrastructure. The Hajj's Vilayet becomes a model of clean, organized administration, welcoming millions of pilgrims annually. The revenue from pilgrimage is reinvested into the holy cities and into charitable works across the globe, managed by the Caliphate's philanthropic arm. This global caliphate also plays a role in international diplomacy. The Sultan Caliph might act as a mediator in disputes between Muslim nations or offer a platform for dialogue between the Islamic world and other civilizations. The existence of a respected, modern, and influential caliphate changes the dynamics of religious identity and international relations, fostering a different kind of global Islamic consciousness, one that is integrated into the modern world system rather than often being perceived as in opposition to it. It becomes a significant moral and spiritual voice on the world stage, advocating for causes such as poverty, alleviation, refugee rights, and global peace from a distinctively Islamic Ottoman perspective. Number 3. Balkan borders and fates redrawn. The Balkans, often called the powder keg of Europe, experience a dramatically different 20th century under the shadow of a strong, modernized Ottoman Empire. Instead of a rapid and often violent retreat of Ottoman power in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, leading to a power vacuum and competing nationalist movements, the empire manages a more controlled evolution of its European territories. The bloody Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 might be averted or take on a much different character. A modernized Ottoman military capable of defending its frontiers and maintaining internal order more effectively means that the Balkan states, Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, Montenegro, are more cautious. Perhaps some territorial adjustments still occur through negotiation or smaller, contained conflicts, but the wholesale expulsion of Ottoman authority from most of Europe doesn't happen. Regions like Macedonia, Albania, and Thrace, with their complex ethnic and religious mixes, could remain as autonomous provinces within the Ottoman federal structure, similar to how Quebec relates to Canada or Scotland to the UK. These provinces would have their own local assemblies, official use of local languages alongside Ottoman Turkish, and representation in the imperial parliament in Istanbul. Cities like Salonik, Thessaloniki, Sarajevo, and Skopje remained vibrant, multi-ethnic Ottoman urban centers. Salonik, with its large Jewish, Greek, Turkish, and Slavic populations, continues as a major port and commercial hub, its diverse communities coexisting under a framework of Ottoman law that guarantees cultural and religious freedoms through a modernized millet system. Sarajevo, the heart of the Vilayet of Bosnia, sees continued investment in infrastructure and education. Its unique blend of Islamic, Orthodox, Catholic, and Jewish cultures preserved and celebrated. Nationalist aspirations are not entirely suppressed, but they are channeled differently. Instead of seeking outright independence through bloody conflict, many Balkan nationalist leaders might find it more pragmatic to work within the Ottoman system, advocating for greater autonomy, cultural rights, and economic development. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, the spark that ignited World War I, might not happen if Bosnia is still an Ottoman province with a different political dynamic, or if Serbian nationalism is less irredentist due to a more stable regional power balance. The long-term consequence is a Balkan peninsula with different borders, different national identities, and potentially fewer ethnic conflicts fueled by great power rivalries. Economic integration projects, such as Trans-Balkan highways and railways connecting Istanbul to Vienna, via Sofia and Belgrade, or Adriatic ports to the Aegean, are undertaken with Ottoman capital and engineering. The Balkanization phenomenon, meaning the fragmentation of a region into smaller hostile states, might not become a political term, or it might refer to some other part of the world. Cultural landscape would also be richer, with a continued Ottoman influence blending with local traditions, creating unique hybrid cultures in art, music, architecture, and cuisine. The fates of millions are altered, and the map of southeastern Europe retains a distinctly Ottoman flavor well into the modern era. Number 2. The sun never sets on a different empire, or fewer empires. A revitalized Ottoman Empire doesn't just survive. It thrives and projects power, fundamentally altering the landscape of global colonialism in the 20th century. Instead of being a target for dismemberment, this modernized state becomes a competitor, or at least a significant check on European imperial ambitions, especially in Africa and Asia. The Ottoman claim to suzerainty over Egypt, lost to British occupation in our timeline, could be reasserted or renegotiated from a position of strength. Perhaps Egypt becomes a highly autonomous Khedivate, but still firmly within an Ottoman sphere of influence, with the Suez Canal's administration jointly managed or remaining under Ottoman control. This would be a major strategic asset. In Libya, Tripolitania, and Cyrenaica, Ottoman rule is consolidated, resisting Italian colonial ambitions. The Senussi order might still be a powerful local force, but they work with or within the Ottoman administration, which invests in developing Libyan ports and exploring its potential resources. Further afield, the Ottomans could expand their influence in the Horn of Africa, building on existing relationships in regions like Eritrea and Somaliland, establishing protectorates or economic partnerships that preempt European colonization. The Red Sea becomes a predominantly Ottoman lake, crucial for trade routes to Asia. In Arabia, Ottoman authority over the Hejaz and Yemen is strengthened, and influence extends into the Persian Gulf, challenging British dominance in the various sheikdoms. This Ottoman presence offers an alternative to European colonial rule for many peoples. The Sultan Caliph, as a prominent non-Western sovereign and spiritual leader of many Muslims, could offer support, alliances, or inspiration to anti-colonial movements in British India, the Dutch East Indies, French North Africa, and Russian Central Asia. Istanbul might become a haven for nationalist leaders and intellectuals from colonized lands, receiving education, funding, and political support. The Ottoman Empire could champion the cause of self-determination for colonized peoples in international forums much earlier and more effectively than occurred in our history. The scramble for Africa might look very different. European powers would face a significant, established, non-European power on the continent, limiting their expansion or forcing them to make concessions. Perhaps parts of Africa remain independent under Ottoman protection or influence. The very narrative of European racial and cultural superiority, which underpinned much of colonialism, is challenged by the existence of a powerful, modern, non-Western empire. This doesn't necessarily mean the Ottomans become a benevolent, anti-colonial force in all instances. They might develop their own spheres of influence, perhaps managed differently than European colonies, with more emphasis on shared Islamic heritage or economic partnership, but still a form of imperial projection. However, the key difference is a multipolar colonial world where European powers do not have a monopoly on imperial expansion. This competition could lead to earlier decolonization in some regions or different political arrangements for post-colonial states. The global South has more options, more leverage. The sun might still set on the British Empire, but it might be rising on a resurgent Ottoman one, or, more likely, the era of vast, singular European dominance is curtailed much sooner, leading to a more balanced and perhaps more contentious global stage. Number 1. Istanbul, tech hub of the Eastern Mediterranean. Forget Silicon Valley for a moment. Picture this: Istanbul, a gleaming metropolis on the Bosphorus, not just a historic wonder, but a global center of technological innovation and scientific research by the late 20th century. This is the reality in a world where the Ottoman Empire successfully modernized and leveraged its resources, including its newfound oil wealth and its strategic position. With stability and prosperity, education becomes a paramount priority. The Darülfünun House of Sciences, the precursor to Istanbul University, is transformed into a world-class research institution, attracting scholars and students from across the empire and beyond. New technical universities, specializing in engineering, medicine, and applied sciences, are established in major cities like Ankara, Izmir, Damascus, and Baghdad. These institutions become hotbeds of innovation, funded by both the state and a burgeoning class of Ottoman industrialists and philanthropists. Ottoman Space Agency, Osmanli Uzay Ajansi, headquartered in Ankara with launch facilities, perhaps in the Anatolian interior, or even a secure desert location in an allied Arab principality, becomes a serious player in the space race. While perhaps not matching the sheer scale of the US and Soviet programs, initially, Ottoman scientists and engineers make significant contributions. They might focus on particular niches, advanced satellite communication topology, vital for connecting their vast, diverse empire, remote sensing for resource management, or even lunar and planetary exploration. Imagine an Ottoman lunar module, the Hilal, landing on the moon in the 1970s, or an Ottoman probe, the Yildiz, sending back the first detailed images from Mars in the 1990s. In medicine, Ottoman research institutes, building on a rich Islamic scholarly tradition, excel. They might pioneer new treatments for diseases prevalent in warmer climates or develop advanced surgical techniques. Ottoman pharmaceutical companies become major global suppliers. In architecture and urban planning, Ottoman engineers and designers blend traditional aesthetics with modern materials and sustainable technologies, creating cities that are both beautiful and functional, perhaps leading the world in earthquake-resistant construction or passive cooling systems for arid environments. The oil wealth isn't just spent, it's invested in research and development. For a post-oil future, the Ottomans become early leaders in solar power technology, harnessing the abundant sunshine of their Middle Eastern and North African territories. Vast solar farms in the Syrian desert or the Arabian Peninsula feed power into a sophisticated imperial grid by the year 2000. Desalination technology, crucial for providing fresh water to arid regions, sees massive advancements driven by Ottoman innovation. Istanbul and other major Ottoman cities, like Izmir and Beirut, become home to sprawling tech parks and startup incubators. Ottoman companies are at the forefront of telecommunications, software development, and perhaps even early forms of artificial intelligence research. There's less brain drain to the West, because brilliant minds from across the empire and the wider Muslim world find ample opportunities and resources within Ottoman borders. This technological dynamism means the Ottoman Empire isn't just a political and economic power, It's a cultural and intellectual one, exporting its innovations, its media, and its unique blend of tradition and modernity to the rest of the globe. The world looks to Istanbul, not just for its history, but for its future.